Hey bitches, welcome back to another episode of Confessionals. Today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the subconscious mind and how oftentimes we are not aware of what is going on in the back of our minds. We're not aware of our patterns, of our learned behaviors, and things like that. I want this episode to focus on taking control of your life and taking authority of your perspectives, your point of view, and your emotions. This is a very personal journey for me. I've, throughout the years, I'm 29, and throughout the years, I've embodied so many characters. Yeah, like as a kid, I experimented, right? Like I wanted to be goth and then I wanted to be girly at one point and then I wanted to be like grungy and as a kid you're just kind of experimenting with what you like. And then as a teenager, I was very I had like a hippie mindset at one point and that to me was probably my happiest. I I try to embody that part of myself now. And it's hard because she was brave. 13, 14-year-old me is I admire her so much. Like she's so strong, she's so resilient, she's so caring, curious, brave. Like I think I'm pretty brave now as a person, but the bravery that I had at 13 and 14 years old completely unmatched. Like completely. I had so much motivation, so much drive. And my bravery was to the point where like I just wanted to try things just to try them, just to see what would happen. And I wasn't really scared of what would happen. I was more so curious. And like for example, this is really dumb. Like these are really dumb examples, but for a 13, 14-year-old, it's like it's so much fun. Um, like one time during lunch, I wondered if the drive-thru at McDonald's would serve us if we were walking. And all my friends were like, no, no, like they're not going to. And I'm like, let's just do it. Let's just see how they react. And we did it, right? And we're like, and kids do that, kids just play around. And then I was getting really into meditating. So I thought like, what happens if I meditate like on the sidewalk with all these cars passing? Like, would I be able to do it? And I told one of my friends, I don't remember who I told, but it was one of my friends, and they were like, don't do it, that's dumb. And I did it. I didn't care. So at that point in my life, I had such a strong will and a strong sense of who I was and what I wanted, and nothing could change my mind. Like I was flexible because I was curious, but when it came to me being myself and having fun, nobody could tell me anything. And it's crazy because during this time in my life, like, you know, my mom was super abusive I mean, she's always been, but like at that time she would beat the shit out of us for anything. I mean, she did like all of our childhood, but at that point specifically because I was a teenager and I was a little bit more like hyper and alive, I would get in a lot of trouble for nothing, right? For nothing. But it's just crazy that I had such that darkness at home and then but I was still so full of life. And that just kind of tells you the power of perspective. So I want to bring that into this episode. This episode is titled "The Subconscious Marches to Its Own Beat" because I feel like our learned behaviors and our experiences just kind of control us, and we're robots to our upbringing and our experiences, and we just act how we think we are supposed to. But I think there's certain ingredients that we need as humans to live fully autonomous and to have full control of our lives. And it's not easy. It's not easy because it can be easy to make the decision like, "Oh, I'm going to take control of my life. I'm going to do this." But there's always all these challenges that come into play. Like after I grew up, I turned 15, 16, things started changing for me. Hormones were changing, situations were changing. And I was a child, so I didn't really have the tools to maintain that strong will and that bravery. and I didn't really know where, like I didn't have any direction. But now as an adult, I feel like I've gathered the tools necessary to face difficult challenges and train my mind a certain type of way, because we're all just computers, right? Like we're all just like programming ourselves to have certain perspectives and viewpoints and make certain decisions. So I just see it as that. It's like my brain is malleable and I can program it any way that I want to. And it takes work, like programming a computer, building something takes work. But once you set it up a certain way, then things flow a lot easier. But yeah, in this episode, I'm going to be talking about toxic patterns, accountability, taking control of your mind, self awareness. Self awareness and accountability are a big one. I'm also going to be talking about allowing yourself to feel your emotions, because I know just said that we're all computers and we can just program ourselves a certain way, but we're computers with emotions, right? We're human beings. Like we function like a computer, but we're not. So I also think a part of this conversation is feeling your emotions. A part of the programming is emotions and dealing with them, because if you just put them in the back, like they become viruses if you just put them in the back of your head. And I'm also going to be talking about the importance of community, friendships, and finally, I'm going to conclude with love. I'm going to be talking about love because, yeah, I feel like this past year, I've been really learning about what it's like to be in love and to experience romantic love in a healthy way. It's taught me a lot of lessons. It's taught me a lot of lessons. So I'm going to conclude with that. But without further ado, let's get this episode started. I think the first step towards taking control of your life and your mind and your emotions is identifying the problem, identifying toxic patterns. What are the things that you do that keep happening, and what are you doing about them? When I'm at work, I come across a lot of people that just spend the entire shift complaining about their situation and how people are a certain way, like people in their lives and people that they meet are this and they're that. And I'm not shitting on complaining, because I think we all complain. We need to release certain things and emotions. And a lot of complaints are valid. And usually with those people, like their complaints are usually valid and they're not wrong. Like based on the things that they tell me about their lives and the people in their lives, it seems true. Like they're right. But one thing that I do notice is that it's always the same thing. It is always the same story with these people. And they're just in a constant state of lack and complaining. And the thing is that you don't have to surround yourself with those kinds of people. You don't have to be stuck in these situations. And I understand that sometimes it's hard to get out of them, but we all have choices. And I understand that sometimes it's hard to get out of them, but we all have choices. And some choices are hard to make. Like a lot of these people are complaining about family members, and depending on the situation, sometimes it's best to completely cut off family members, or setting boundaries is an option, setting strong boundaries. And people just don't do that because it's hard and it takes a lot of bravery and it takes courage. And I think it's easier to just stay in this like woe is me attitude of like this never happens to me, and like this, if you knew my life, blah blah blah. And I speak so freely on this because I usually am very empathetic towards people's experiences, but there has to be a point where I'm just like, okay, bro, like what are you doing? Like why are we stuck in this loop? And everybody goes through shit. Like I don't like to compare, but I think sometimes it's necessary to bring even your own experiences into the conversation. Like I have every excuse to be a shitty person. Like, I really do have every fucking excuse in the book to be a shitty person, to complain, to be mad at the world. And I just don't want to be in that space. Like, it's such, like, I've already experienced so much lack and so much trauma in my life. Like, why would I want to add more to it when I have options? Like, despite that, now, because I've made certain choices and I've stuck through certain paths that are good for me, I feel like I have options. I can choose to not be unhappy. It's as easy as that. It's crazy. Like, I feel like I'm a little bit contradicting myself because I'm saying that it's hard, but making a decision, just making the decision isn't hard. Like, you just have to choose a certain path for yourself. And in moments where I'm upset or I am sad, I allow myself to feel those feelings because oftentimes they're valid. But once I'm done processing that, I have a choice. Like, am I going to remain unhappy? Am I going to remain in this state? Am I going to succumb to depression? Or am I going to look for another perspective? Like, there's so many perspectives to view the world from. And I have the power and I trust myself to make the right decision to choose one that serves me. And when you're crying and throwing up, it's hard. It's hard to see the world that way. But that's why you need to cry and throw up. That's why you need to just release it and sob and scream and throw up. And I'm saying that because I was at that point not too long, not that long ago, where I'm just like on the like I'm crying so much I'm literally about to throw up. Like, I'm so close to throwing up. And I could if I just let it, but I kind of just regress. But anyway, yeah, like sometimes you need those moments to clear yourself and detox and choose something that serves you. Because if you're fortunate enough to live in a country, in a first world country, where you have access to all these opportunities, if you're fortunate enough to be in a country where there's no war, where you're not being abused, like, there's so much room. There's so much room for growth. And I speak for myself. Like, I was being abused up until like 25 years old, like from birth to 25 years old by different people. And I understand how hard it is to leave those situations and to detach because you're kind of addicted to those people, or you feel like you need to serve them. But it's possible. It's so possible. You just got to get tired of your own shit and of allowing it, because you turn into an adult. You go from child to adult. And once you're an adult, you have the power to say no and to move on. And it might not be perfect, but it's possible. I swear, I'm living testimony of that. It's possible. And with that comes a lot of accountability and self-awareness, because yeah, people are shitty. People are going to treat you bad. Any opportunity that bad people get to take advantage of you, they're going to do it. They are going to do it. This sounds silly, but I'm on this thing called Poshmark, right? I sell my clothes and a bunch of stuff that I don't need anymore. And Poshmark has lives, so people go live and sell their stuff. And when they go live and sell their stuff, they have an option to help you sell yours as well. And you get like up to 2 items at a time, right? That they can sell. And sometimes there's a lot of people, so you have to wait in line. And I noticed how easy it is for people to take advantage, because there's so many people that go on the channel like, when are you gonna run my items? When is it my turn? Like, am I next? Or they'll leave, the room, and some hosts have rules that if you leave, then we won't run your items because you're not here. Like, you can't answer any questions about what you're selling. You are not helping the algorithm, whatever. Fair, right? And some people leave, come back, and they don't have a valid reason as to why they left. Like, they're just like, where are my items? Like, they don't even explain anything. And like, people can just be so demanding and so rude. And I know this girl that gets on live, and there's this other girl that is always like, let me skip the line, let me skip the line. And yeah, like my point is there's always going to be people, this is a really silly fucking analogy, but there's always going to be people that are looking to take advantage of you, and that's just the world that we live in. We live in a terrible world where men kill women and where people just generally take advantage of others. Like that's just the world that we live in. So, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to protect yourself? How are you going to set boundaries? What is going on in your life or what has gone on that you are allowing these things to happen to you? Because they will happen, but only you choose whether you let it continue. So accountability and self-awareness is necessary because even at one point when I was being abused, I'm like, why the fuck am I doing this? Why am I tolerating this? Why do I keep going back? And I had to look within myself and be like, wow, this was how I was brought up. This is how my parents treated me. Like it was neglect and abuse. So of course I'm going to repeat that in a romantic partner. And like, okay, that makes sense. You give yourself, it's hard to come face to face with your shadow. That's why they call it shadow work. Um, but it's it also gives you the ability to give yourself a lot of grace because some things aren't your fault. But you have to take, even though they're not your fault, you still have to take responsibility over your life. And you can juggle different things at once. Like now I feel like I have a good balance of knowing where I messed up, knowing where I didn't love myself enough and where I allowed people to treat me poorly, but then also carry that emotion of like, wow, these people really fucked me over. Like they were bad to me. They treated me like a non-human, and it's like it's this balance where I don't feel like a victim. I don't want to carry this woe is me attitude, but I acknowledge what happened and I can move on from it. And I won't let it happen again. And I won't keep repeating that. So I think being able to juggle the different emotions that a situation or people bring up is important. And just embracing those, even if they contradict each other. Sometimes, like, life is complicated and things contradict each other, and that's fine. There was even one instance where I dated this guy. I think I've talked about this briefly before. I dated this guy and he was pretty like whatever. Like he was not bad to me. He's nice. He was decent company, but didn't work out, right? Didn't work out. He ended it after like 3 months of dating, just kind of seeing what happens. And it took me like 4 or 5 months to get over him. It never takes me that long to get over somebody, especially somebody that like I knew was not right for me. Like there was things about him that I didn't like. It wasn't the best company. It was just like good company. And I knew in my gut that this is not my person. And I kind of knew it all along, but it's still, I had limerence and it took me so long to get over. And I had to realize, I have talked about this before. I had to realize that I wasn't loving myself enough. Like I wasn't loving myself enough to desire the best person for me, a person that I was going to be way more compatible with, a person that truly loved me, that saw me. Because this guy, even though he was a good guy, like he didn't really see me for who I was. Like he didn't see my character, my, just who I am as a human being. He just didn't see that. And most guys don't. Most people don't, even friends. So I didn't love myself enough to realize that that's what I deserve. And that I also deserve someone that wants to be with me. So once that clicked in my head, it was easy breezy from there. I got over it so much faster, like literally immediately. So I think being introspective just can really drain a lot of blockages. It is it's so important to look within yourself, to ask yourself questions because sometimes we just get stuck in this loop of I feel this way and I don't know why, or I don't know why people do this to me. I don't know why my life is like this. Instead of just saying to yourself that you don't know or that things are unfair, ask yourself, why is this happening? Why am I allowing this to happen? why do I feel this way? Could it be because of this? Could it be because of that? Like, just being introspective changes the entire game. And looking back at your past in your life, because I think sometimes there are certain things that we don't know that affect us more than they did. Like, for example, with my family, I didn't know that my parents were really bad until I was like 26, 27. Like, yeah, like 26. And it really took a conversation with my brother to realize that. Just one conversation, because my body knew it. Like, my subconscious knew it, and I was just being controlled by that. I was being controlled by, like, oh, I don't know why I feel so, like, bad around my parents. I feel so uneasy. I feel like I feel sick. I feel suffocated. Like, but whatever. Like, I would just feel those emotions and be like, oh, like, I'm bothered. I'm bothered. And I never asked myself why. Like, why do I feel like that? Like, is it maybe because they were terrible people to their children? And that's a scary question to ask. That is such a scary question. But these are the questions that are necessary for you to free yourself of the shackles of your subconscious and the shadows that like linger from trauma in your past. And yeah, like when I had that conversation with my brother, I was asking myself those questions and he was asking me the questions, and boom, it like released. The the questions were answered, and it made sense, and it made perfect sense. And it wasn't, even though the questions are hard to ask and they might be really hard to deal with, sometimes they're not that hard to deal with. Sometimes the fear of asking those questions is worse than the actual outcome. Like, I think the relief is a lot more rewarding than the fear, for sure, for sure. Also, one very important thing that I have to choose to commit to is having a healthy mindset and perspective, because there's so many options, there's so many perspectives I can choose from, but what is always going to serve me, and this is fact, is choosing perspectives that are healthy and positive, because everything could be true, right? Like, everything is subjective. I experienced this really bad thing in childhood. I could have the perspective of like, this sucks, this is terrible, this is why I deal with these issues, and life sucks. That's true. It's very true. Or I could have the perspective of, I dealt with these things I shouldn't have. This fucking sucks and this is terrible, but I don't want to keep living my life in that suffering. Like, why would I stay stuck in in that disappointment, in that sadness, in that trauma? Like, why am I going to continue what I experienced when I no longer have to? And both of those things are true. Like, life does suck. I did experience those things. It hurts, but I don't have to stay there. I really don't. Like, I'm in control of my life. I'm free. I'm free of those people. So it can be hard at times, but I'm tired. Like, again, I could say I'm so tired, I don't want to keep doing this, or I'm so tired, I'm not gonna deal with shitty shit. Like, I'm not. I am not. And that's the point where I'm at right now. I'm very exhausted emotionally from the things that I've dealt with. I'm tired of being sad. So I'm not gonna be sad. Like, I'll be sad when I need to, and that's it. Like, I'm not gonna continue in a cycle that doesn't serve me, because I don't have to. I can get up and I can choose how I'm gonna lead my life every day and how I'm gonna feel. And no matter how long it takes or how much thought process or meditation or whatever it takes, I'm committing to that, because I have the option. Like, I keep saying that because I don't know how to stress it even more, that we have choices. Like, we just really do have choices. And I get bothered, like, people that are overly negative and complain a lot. I honestly, they bug the shit out of me, bro. Like, I want to tell them to just shut the fuck up and not talk to me, because I understand when things are valid, but shut the fuck up, bro. Like I'm just fix it. Just fix it. And that's not me not having empathy because I do. I swear I have empathy. But I also have empathy for myself, bro, for my ears, for what I hear, what I consume. Like, if I'm around a person and they're just like yapping about how horrible something is without doing anything about it, bye. Bye. You don't want to help yourself, and I'm not going to waste my time trying to help somebody that doesn't want to help themselves. So, yeah. This episode is all about helping yourself, bitch, because why would you be miserable? That doesn't make any fucking sense. But yes, it is important to take control of your own life. And the thing is, it's very easy to be positive and bubbly and have rose-colored glasses when everything is going great, right? And that's fine. Like you, being in that state where everything is good, chef's kiss. Like I love being in that state. Who doesn't? But the true test to committing to healthy mindsets, to healthy perspectives, to things that serve you is committing to that when it hurts most, when it's hardest, when you're going through it. That's when you have to build that resilience of, I'm going to commit to a perspective that serves me. With that said, I don't want to skip over the fact I've already kind of breezed through this. It's important to feel your emotions. It's important to cry and throw up, like I said before, because a lot of people will take what I said and be like, be positive, take a good perspective, do things that serve you. Yes, but you can't really do that until you are crying and throwing up, processing all the negative feelings. Like you kind of have to be in this complaining, woe is me attitude and just release all of these like negative thoughts and emotions before you get to that space of, I'm going to take authority over my mind and having a healthy perspective. Like you kind of one has to come before the other, and sometimes, people are just overly positive and they're just avoiding their emotions. And sometimes people are overly negative and they're not helping themselves. So, yeah, it's important to acknowledge that there should be a balance between the two. If you're going through it, feel your emotions, cry until you throw up, scream, and think all the negative things that your body wants to feel. Just release it. And that is one thing that I'm doing in therapy. Like I'm doing EMDR, and I feel, I think of these like traumatic things, we go in order of like these traumatic things I've experienced. And I notice the feelings that they bring up and where I feel them in my body. Like I'm very aware, and I'm very self-aware of like what is going on in my body and in my mind. And that is necessary. And again, that's like asking yourself the scary questions. Like you're letting your body ask the questions for you, and you're letting your body just purge and detox itself. And once you're there, once you're already all cried out, then there's room. You're detoxed, and then there's room for the application of these healthy perspectives and of these options that you can bring up. But yeah, this whole process is just a way of loving yourself and living life, because it's living life. This is what it's like. It's ups and it's downs. It's suffering and it's chaos, but it's also ecstasy and passion and love. So you kind of just have to deal with the cards that you've been dealt and do it in the best way that you can. And you just have to continue doing your best and learning, and eventually it'll get life won't get easier, but dealing with things will get easier. Also, self-care is very important. Um like I said, I was recently crying and throwing up. And I felt like shit, I felt horrible, and it's taking days to deal with the things that life throws at me. But I got a massage. I got a Thai massage. That bitch like cracked me up. I've never had a massage so violent, but it was the best. Honestly, it was the fucking best. And that helped. That helped. I went out with my friends and not I didn't, well, I did drink. I shouldn't have, but most of the time I wasn't drinking. So that was good. And I've been kind of relying on community and friends to deal with hard things. And it's really important. It's really important to have people around you that care about you and that are willing to support you and listen to you and just have a shoulder to cry on. And sometimes I will say that, some communities are better than others. Sometimes people don't understand certain things, and but they're still there, right? Like they're like what matters is that people are offering their support and that you take it for what it is. It's like they're trying to help you and they're trying to be there for you. And no community is ever perfect, but it's still important to have that emotional support because it's kind of harder to deal with hard things alone. And even with community, like sometimes you do have the community and you still feel alone, but I think it would be worse without the community. Like you still need some sort of, yeah, you need people around you. Like that's what we're built for. We're built to have people around us. And side note, this has absolutely nothing to do with the episode, but I'm so annoyed by LA because like cars just isolate the shit out of us, dude. Like that pisses me off. That pisses me off. Like when I was in New York, it's just every time I go, I love being surrounded by people. Even if I get harassed on the street, like I get harassed on the street in LA too, but I'm being harassed on the street and there's shit on the floor, human shit on the floor, and there's a bunch of cars and smog everywhere. Like like nothing about it is pleasant. Whereas where I'm in New York, there's all kinds of people, like, you listen to all these things and the harassment is just like kind of part of it, but there's so many other appealing things that it's easier to manage. And then you can say shit. Like if somebody harasses you, you can scream at them, you can fucking say something because there's so many people around. So it's kind of safer to protect yourself. But yeah. Anyway, that was a little rant. That was a little side note. I'm going to conclude this episode with this one topic. I'm going to talk about love and what that means to me. And this ties with this episode because when your subconscious marches to its own beat and you're not fully aware of your behaviors and your patterns, and when they're negative, oftentimes that is caused by a lack of love or by violence or trauma, right? And trauma and violence is just like the absence of love. So I think love is really the main topic in this because even dealing with these traumas and helping yourself and feeling your emotions, that's an act of love. That's an act of self love. Being surrounded by your community, that's an act of love. And love takes a lot of bravery because especially if didn't have the best upbringing, even like people that didn't really grow up that traumatized, but maybe grew up with parents that didn't really love each other and were just like cold, or there was just maybe more so neglect than violence, like maybe no violence but neglect. Like that's traumatic. I don't think a lot of people realize how bad that is, and oftentimes it's worse because sometimes indifference is worse than violence for some people. But yeah, love is about bravery. I read All About Love by Bell Hooks, and that book is the reason why I'm doing this episode. After reading All About Love by Bell Hooks, my perspective on love was completely shifted because in the past I had different points of views. Like there was times where I didn't want to be in love and I just pictured myself single for the rest of my life. And even that like doesn't sound too bad because I have a lot of fun by myself and I've been very fulfilled being single. And for straight women, sometimes like that is the best option. But after reading that book, I had to ask myself why I had the perspective that I had. Like, why was I closed off to love? Why did I not want to deal with that? Why was I scared? And the answer came very easily. It's a trauma, obviously. But I had to ask myself if I truly wanted to live authentically. Like, do I want to live authentically? Do I want to be myself fully and embrace that freedom of being 100% myself in the world? And the answer to that is obviously yes. Like it's so freeing to be in that space. But if the answer to that is yes, then that means that I have to love fully and authentically and to the most of my capacity. And that's a scary thing to do. That's a scary thing to do. But that's how you live life to the fullest. And that's how people live happy, fulfilling lives is by loving the people in their lives to the fullest. Now, that is really scary, right? Because people disappoint you, people break your heart, people leave. But the questions that I had to ask myself after that is, do I have the tools and the self-love necessary to cope with that and to not shut myself off and keep going? Because the rewards, the potential rewards, and the rewards that you ultimately do get with living authentically and loving fully are much greater than the disappointments that you'll face. So, yeah, I've had to train myself to commit to that mindset and I feel free in it. Like even after heartbreak and loss, I feel very grateful that I was able to live this out and that I was able to love this way. And that is also why I think I've kind of changed my mind about children and having kids is just the love. The love that you would have for a child. Like that is definitely something to experience. Like I to me, the love that you can give to a child is like the peak. Like I think it's definitely above romantic love. Like romantic love is below that. But loving a child is the peak most ultimate love that you could feel. And I think I do want to experience that and I want to give that. I really really want to give that unconditionally. That is the only love that I feel should be 100% unconditional is the love that you have for your own child. So, yeah, I'm not like I don't have to have kids. I don't feel like that's a need for me still, but now I'm very open to the possibility of that happening. And part of that reason is just like the love that you'll give them. And then also the love that you experience with a romantic partner, with like a husband or a wife, and loving that child like together. And then that love making you grow as a couple. Like that, like I understand the lore behind having a family now. Like I get it. I get it. And I never truly got it before. Honestly, like I kind of felt like people just did it out of just loneliness and like that's what you're supposed to do. And a lot of people do that, but I think subconsciously, like very deep down, that is the desire. It is to have a tight knit community just full of love and fulfillment. That is the true goal of having a family. And if I'm if that's not what I'm gonna have when have a family, like if love is not gonna be at the center, if fulfillment and community and that like yeah, just that love, if that's not gonna be there, then I don't want a family, right? Like I'm not just gonna build a family to build one. That's fucking retarded. But that's fucking I'm not supposed to, that's fucking stupid. But that's the only way I would have a family is if if we achieve the goal of what a family is supposed to be. Yeah. And I'm curious. I'm also curious, like, what happens when you raise a child in a super healthy home, a healthy and loving home. Like, I wonder what happens. Like, maybe that child will be like I don't know, like a fucking astronaut or something. Like, I really wonder what kind of person they become. And, they could be great. They could change the world, or they could just be a regular, healthy, beautiful person. Like, it's just, yeah, the having the possibility of achieving something like that now feels a lot more special to me. And but it's also not a need. It's not a need, but it's definitely a desire. But yeah, it is a blessing to love. It is a blessing to feel love, to be loved. And it's a brave act. It's definitely brave because it's risky. It's very risky. And there could be a lot of fucking terrible crying and throwing up type of heartbreak involved, but it's worth it. I think it's definitely worth it. And if the possibility of that romantic love is not there, then there's always self-love, which should always be there, should always be at the forefront. Like, the only way to truly achieve healthy romantic love, like in togetherness and like a family, is by having self-love. Like, that is at the core of all the other types of love. It is self-love, because when you love yourself, then you are able to attract people that will love you and that won't sabotage the beautiful things that happen when you love someone. But yeah, that concludes today's episode. I hope you guys liked it. I hope I made sense. Sometimes I feel like as I'm talking and like yapping, I don't really make sense. And then I edit and I'm like, okay, that makes a little sense. So I hope it made sense. I hope it made sense. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. This episode was really important to me. This is a topic that is just hyper present in my mind all the time. And yeah, like committing to myself and my happiness and my well-being. It ain't easy. It's not easy, or it hasn't been easy, but the more I practice it, the easier it gets. And it gives me a lot of like freedom. And I feel light because I don't have a responsibility to like tear myself down or to see the world in a negative perspective. Like, I'm not weighed down by the weight of the world. Like, I acknowledge that the weight of the world is there. I acknowledge how it's affected me, how I feel tired by it, but I don't have to be weighed down by it. I don't. And that's just life. Like, life comes with ups and downs and disappointments and all these things, and that's I just have to accept it. We just have to accept that, and we have to deal with it the best way that we can. But yeah, anyway, thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.